Let's start it from the top. Yo, the name's Bloodstain Lane, a.k.a. hit your bitch with the bus driver uppercut because she was sleepwalking and it creeped me the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? You could call me the Fila Don, Mr. Machismo, the Reptilian Slayer. We live from Queens, New York with my boy Bobby Razak about to shoot this little interview. People want to know what the fuck I do. I give you that fucking raw, uncut truth. No fucking filter, ranging from conspiracy theories, MMA, boxing, social commentary, the whole fucking nine. You want the cold, hard truth, you come to me for that. That's what the fuck I do.
What was the first major boxing event that made you realize I'm a combat sports fan? Either MMA or boxing?
Okay, the first fight I ever watched was Mike Tyson, Larry Holmes, right in this fucking living room with my grandfather and my father, you know what I'm saying? And right there, Iron Mike, of course, being from New York and being he was like a god back. He was like a superhero when we were kids. And that right there turned me into a fight fan from that day. I think it was 1987. And that just kicked off my whole combat sports fascination, really.
Larry Holmes, man, he messed up in the 4th round. That rope where he threw the uppercut.
Yes.
That was a very defining point.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And back then you couldn't make any mistakes against Mike. When Mike was under the tutelage of Cus D'Amato and Kevin Rooney, even when Cus died under Kevin Rooney, I mean, he was probably to this day still the best fighter I've ever seen. And I'm talking about that 1980s prime Mike Tyson. You couldn't make mistakes. His defense was impeccable. His slips, his footwork, his hand speed, his power. And it was truly special watching a prime Mike Tyson as a kid.
Carl the Truth Williams, rest in peace.
Absolutely.
So that was the first major boxing event. And how did you, as a fan of boxing, evolve from there onwards? How did you approach the fight game from there on?
Well, after that, I just became a fan of everything fighting, man, you know. First of all, I was always a pro wrestling fan. Then I started watching, I got into, you know, basically the blood sport with Jean-Claude Van Damme. That really got me into martial arts. And then UFC 1. And I could truthfully say with a straight face that I watched UFC 1 live. You know what I'm saying? I'm not one of these newbie fucking MMA fans that are out now that just started watching when The Ultimate Fighter fucking came on. We've been there from day one when UFC first fucking started. So, you know what I mean? And ever since then, I became a huge MMA fan, specifically UFC 6 when Tank Abbott came onto the scene. Tank Abbott was a guy who he was just like the first real personality in UFC. He was like a heel, a bad guy, a villain. You know, a big chubby guy with a beard, straight off the fucking bar stool, fighting with martial artists, slinging fucking dogs. It was just something that had really a pro wrestling type element to it. And Tank Abbott was like a guy who I really, really looked up to as a kid. I know people gonna say he's the wrong guy to look up to, but he was my fucking guy. He really was the guy who really, you know, made me a huge MMA fan.
So you're from the mold of like Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Vito Antuofermo, Marvin Hagler. These are the throwback fighters that you respect and appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I respect all fighters. See, the whole thing with me is when it comes to the fight game, for me to be a fan of a fighter, I don't, you know, you could have the skills, but you also have to have the right aura to you. If you don't have the right aura, I'm not going to be a fan. You know, there's guys who are not like Jack Dempsey that I'm a huge fan of, Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker. One of my all-time favorite fighters was one of the best defensive wizards of all time. You know, to me, it's all about skills and aura, and, you know, that usually gets my support.
You want to sip a liquor, get your buzz on?
Yeah, let me take a sip of this shit. Yeah.
Are you a fan of Bernard Hopkins? Consider he's like the old school to new school.
Of course, man. I've always been a fan of B-Hop. Matter of fact, we watched, I was watching B-Hop back in the fucking, I'm talking about in the 90s, man. To this day, and he's fighting tonight, as a matter of fact, as crazy as that sounds. The guy's almost 50 fucking years old. Bernard Hopkins is a fucking legend, man. I remember when he fought Tito Trinidad, you know, we were all going crazy for Bernard Hopkins. He was an underdog in that fight. And he completely shitted all over Felix Trinidad in that fight. And it's just amazing that he's still fighting to this day.
He's fighting tonight? Who's he fighting tonight? Even hit.
I forget the guy's name. It's Kurat something. I forget his name.
Wow.
It's a guy he should be able to beat.
Who would have won, Marvin Hagler or B-Hop?
I think Marvin Hagler's the greatest. Well, behind Sugar Ray Robinson, well, No, Marvin Hagler just might be the greatest middleweight of all time. He really, really might be the greatest middleweight of all time. Marvin Hagler was the definition of boxing. He was the epitome. He was everything what I loved about boxing. Matter of fact, I was Fahrenheit's favorite fighter as a kid. Marvin Hagler. I used to watch all his old tapes.
I believe you got robbed against Ray Leonard. What's your opinion?
I do. I still believe that. I believe that Ray Leonard was trying to steal rounds. He was losing the rounds, and in the last 10, 20 seconds, he turned it up, and he was stealing rounds that way, which to me is complete bullshit. But I also believe that Marvin Hagler was robbed in that fight.
You ever met Vito Antuofermo? Is he from this area?
Vito Antuofermo was actually from Howard Beach. He's like literally 5 minutes away. It was crazy. I used to box his son, Patty Antuofermo, in the late 90s. I used to go to Cowboys Boxing Club on Albert Road here in Ozone Park. I used to spar his son, and I actually met Vito a few times.
What's he like?
He's a little punch drunk, let's just say that. But he's a great guy. Great guy.
Okay, so you was at UFC 1. We have Zuffa Takeover now with a new UFC. How do you feel the sport of UFC MMA has progressed in its various incarnates, i.e. SEG, Pride, current Zuffa?
Well, in terms of popularity, obviously it's fucking made huge strides. As far as where MMA is right now, I'm not as crazy about it as I used to be, as I was during the SEG era and the Pride days. And the reason why, I'll tell you why I like the SEG era. The SEG era was fun because you had a specific martial art versus another specific martial art. You had a Muay Thai guy versus a fucking sumo wrestler, a Shotokan karate guy fight a fucking jiu-jitsu guy. And it was something out of like the movie Bloodsport, really. It was like, it was fun, man. It was entertaining to watch, man. It was like, then during the Pride era, guys started getting a little bit more well-rounded, but guys still had a specific strength. Shogun was a great Muay Thai guy with good jiu-jitsu, but he was really mostly a Muay Thai guy. And the thing with Pride was guys went for the kill, guys went for the knockouts, guys went for the submissions. It was just the whole vibe, the whole aura of Pride, the ring, the introductions. It was something special. It was beautiful, and it really showed a lot of that Bushido spirit. Whereas now, to me, the reason why I don't feel the same about MMA now is because what I previously said before is that I feel like there's less fighters and more athletes. Like, don't get me wrong. A lot of these guys are, John Jones. He's a good MMA fighter, but to me, he's more of an athlete than an actual fighter. Like in Pride, you had guys like Fedor, you had guys like Shogun, Vanderlei Silva. These guys were tough as nails. These guys went for it. And truth be told, man, there's not that many great personalities in MMA no more. That's another thing. It seems like to me the sport is like all college frat boy type bullshit, and I'm just not feeling it. It doesn't have the same vibe to me. Don't get me wrong, it's still a great sport. I still love it. But to me, the SEG era and Pride era were my favorite eras of MMA.
What about Strikeforce era?
Strikeforce is great too. This is the whole thing. MMA was great when it was powerhouse organizations. It kind of reminded me of the wrestling days when you had WWE, WCW, and ECW. So you always had something great to look forward to. If one organization was slacking, you could go watch this one. And when you had Strikeforce, and you had Elite XC, and you had Dream and Sengoku, you had so many different options, and there was talent spread all over the board. So it gave you more of an option. And it was also fun to fantasize in your head about dream matchups, or what would happen if Overeem fought this guy in the UFC. So it made for more, like for hardcore fans, it was great, It's easy to keep track of the sport now as a casual. You could even be a casual fan and know everything about the sport because it's just really the UFC. All the other shit's gone. You know what I mean? But back then, you had to be a real hardcore fan to follow the sport of MMA. You had to watch all these organizations. And that's, to me, when I get into something, I become a dedicated student of it. And I was a hardcore fan. And, those are the people I like to converse with.
Where do you see the evolution of MMA versus boxing? Do you see boxing as becoming an archaic sport? Here's a problem with boxing right now. You had all these legends, Mayweather, Ray Leonard, De La Hoya that came in the Olympics. People saw them in Tuesday night fights, Friday night fights. We don't really have those forums. We just have these superstars, but the mid-tier, low-tier is not making that money. How are we going to build the next level of Floyd Mayweather when we're not really supporting regular free TV, NBC, ABC, worldwide of sports? How are we going to keep the sport alive?
Well, they definitely got to change the business model, and they actually really.
You feel me though, right?
I feel you 100% on that. And to be honest with you, as much as I just shitted on Dana White, he's also brilliant for doing what he did with the UFC, with the Ultimate Fighter show, and and I feel like boxing should go in that direction. Except in boxing, UFC is Zuffa. They're their own thing. In boxing, you have Bob Arum, you have Top Rank, you have Golden Boy, you have Lou DiBella, you have all these guys, and they're never gonna come together and never gonna make one big thing. So basically, they need to change the whole model around. One thing with boxing though is that, as long, I always said, I think it was Bernard Hopkins that said it, it was one of these guys, said as long as there's poverty in this fucking world, boxing's always gonna exist and be watched, because a lot of people can't afford to train MMA. It's an expensive sport. Jiu-jitsu is very expensive. You go to a boxing gym, you pay $20 a month, $10 a month in some gyms. MMA is fucking $200 a month. You gotta buy the gi, you gotta buy all this shit. Another thing with boxing is, the Mexicans and the Filipinos and all these guys, when they do these pay-per-views do huge numbers. But I do agree with you, you got to do a better job of building stars, specifically American stars. Because other than Floyd Mayweather, there's not really, there's great boxers, great American boxers, but none of them are really going to get huge pay-per-view numbers. The guys who are going to do the numbers are the Mexicans, Canelo, Juan Manuel Marquez, Manny Pacquiao, even this kid, Gennady Golovkin. These guys are not American boxers. And, Americans want, obviously they're going to gravitate to the American fighter. So they need to do a better job of building up the American fighters and promote and change the whole format around.
Are you a fan of Floyd Mayweather?
You know what? I am a fan of Floyd Mayweather. If you watch some of my videos, I've said Floyd is the best prize fighter. You always have these MMA jerk jobs who want to fight me, and they say, like, oh, how's Floyd Mayweather the best fighter? All he could do is box. I'm not saying he's the best overall fighter. He is the best prize. This is what the fight game is about, earning prizes, right? And who's better than Floyd, Bobby? Can you tell me who's made more money than Floyd? Who's undefeated? He's the best prize fighter in the last 20, 25 years.
Who would have won prime Ray Robinson or Floyd Mayweather?
It's Sugar Ray Robinson fought them all, man. He fought them all. He fought all the best guys. He fought everybody. Sugar Ray Robinson, I mean, listen, I wasn't born in that era, but as a boxing fan, I've gone back and watched some of the tapes. He was just a brilliant guy, brilliant fighter, and he fought everybody. See, the thing with Floyd is that's always going to hang over his head is that I even feel, even as a Floyd fan, I feel like he's selectively chosen his opponents and when to fight him. He never fought Cotto in his prime. He still hasn't fought Manny Pacquiao when that whole thing was going on. He never fought Antonio Margarito in his prime. He's kind of picked and chose when he was going to fight these guys. So that's always going to hang over his head. Don't get me wrong, the fight over Canelo was impressive. A lot of people are going to say Canelo was raw, too young, but Canelo's still a 22-year-old kid, a young bull, and he was heavier than Floyd, and Floyd still beat him. So Floyd is one of the greats, but he's definitely not, in my opinion, above Sugar Ray Robinson.
What do you think about a prime Joe Louis versus a prime Mike Tyson?
I will say this, I don't care what anybody says, any boxing snob, because once you start talking about Mike being one of the greatest, all these old boxing smug snobs want to start talking shit. Mike Tyson, from the time I seen him, was the best I've ever seen. Like I said, the footwork, the speed, the power, the defense, the peekaboo defense that he had, he blended it all together, and I really believe he would beat Joe Louis.
Joe Louis, the tough MO, though.
Joe Louis is one of the greats, but that Tyson was a special fighter. And I'm talking about the custom model Kevin Rooney Tyson. I'm not talking about the Tyson that came out of jail that just was a straightforward bull who beat people just on intimidation. I'm talking about the skilled 85, 86, 87, 88, 89 Mike Tyson.
Do you think 86, 85 Tyson could have caught prime Ali, though? Ali was a little bit fast on the feet.
Ali, let me tell you something right now, man. Ali, hand speed was superhuman-like. It was unbelievable. I think if Ali used that jab, he might be a problem for Mike. So I would probably give the edge to Ali. Yeah, just based on that hand speed was just unreal, man.
But not necessarily take him out. Maybe just outpoint him. Yeah.
I would say outpoint him. Yes.
How would you rate in your top 3 heavyweights of all time? Would you put Lennox Lewis in there? Would you put Riddick Bowe? Like, who would you put on a contemporary level? Anyone from contemporary level? Evander?
Are you talking about top 3 of all time?
Yeah, top 3, top 5. Who in the contemporary list would go? Well, give me your top 5 period.
I mean, you would have to put, obviously, Muhammad Ali. You'd have to put Joe Louis. You'd have to put...
Can you give me a scale? Like 1, 2... Is there a way you can give me a scale? Who you think? Is that tough?
It's tough to do. I would say Ali. I would say Joe Louis. You'd have to put Rocky Marciano on there too, just based. You know, the thing with Rocky Marciano is that Rock, he is 49-0 record, but he fought Joe Louis when Joe Louis was out of his prime already. And I always say this, man. Rocky Marciano wasn't even a heavyweight. He fought at 180 pounds. Imagine if Rocky Marciano was fighting someone like Vladimir Klitschko today. He would lose, man. Let's keep it real. He would lose. Vladimir Klitschko is 6'5", 250. Rocky Marciano is 5'10", 180 pounds. It would be a bad mismatch. But just based on, you can't judge like that. On errors, Rocky Marciano's on the list.
Beautiful short-range power, Jersey Joe Walker.
Jersey Joe Walker. Larry Holmes, man. Larry Holmes might have the best jab of all time, man. One of the all-time greats. See, you could go back. You go back to guys like Jack Johnson, but then I've never seen these guys actually fight. You'd have to be a real historian, to make this list, But from the fights that I have seen, that I've watched on clips on YouTube, it's definitely Ali, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano. Holyfield, man, he's up there, man. Holyfield's up there. I don't know if I put him in the top 5, but he's up there. Lennox Lewis got to be up there.
What do you think of the Sonny Liston, the 2 Ali fights with Sonny Liston?
Definitely a fix. Absolutely a fix. Sonny Liston was a monster. He was a monster, and then you see that happen, it was definitely a fix. And, the mob had their hand in everything back then. Shit, the fucking mob has their hand in everything right now. Still.
Do you believe Sonny Liston was murdered?
Probably. I would say so.
Yeah, he's found kind of mysteriously dead in his house in Las Vegas.
Things were fucked up back then, man.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What do you think the fix was about? Do you think it was like a financial mob thing?
Absolutely. You probably owe money to the fucking mob. Listen, there's a lot of corruption, man. Even today, in today's sport, man, these judges that do these scorecards, man, you see it with your own eyes. It's disgusting.
Bobby, what do you think happened with Bruce Lee?
The death touch?
The death touch?
Yeah.
How about you?
Something was mysterious.
Bruce Lee was killed.
Yeah, totally, yeah. What's your opinion on a prime Ray Leonard and a Mayweather? How do you think that would have went down? Oh, actually, go back. What do you think about the Nomas?
The Nomas, I mean, listen,
it's a documentary.
Yeah, what's great? I have the documentary TiVo. I haven't watched it. Roberto Duran's an animal, a savage. My thoughts on all that. Listen, these guys are in the ring. These guys are fighting. Everybody from the outside has no idea what happens in that ring. People talk shit. Oh, this guy's a quitter. This guy's a quitter. Man, shut the fuck up with that shit. Boxing, you know how hard boxing? Boxing is not like MMA. MMA, you could wrestle, you could clinch, you could take a guy down. You get little boxing. You were for 12 rounds, back then 15 rounds, getting punched in your head. You have no choice but to get punched in your head for 15 rounds. It's a whole different animal. So anybody that's criticizing guys like Duran or even Costa Zoo against Ricky Hatton, they have no fucking right.
Do you feel, in many ways, boxing is a tougher game than MMA if you was to break down the element of it?
I've trained more. I've trained them both. MMA, you have to learn a lot of shit, man. You got to learn a lot of stuff to compete in MMA, and you have to be well-rounded. If you go in, you're not well-rounded, you're going to get killed nowadays because everybody's training the same stuff. But in boxing, it's a science because it's a game of inches. It's all about, timing and technique. It really is a science. Boxing is more brutal because, like I said, in MMA, there's different ways of winning. You could stall a fight by clinching, by taking a guy down. In boxing, you were getting punched in your head the whole fight. Body shots, head shots. So it's a little bit more vicious, I think, than MMA.
Did you feel, especially when you was boxing, bro, did you feel that the ability for you to absorb a punch was more mental or more physical? You thought you had a DNA to absorb a punch? Did you find that when your mind was more right, you was able to absorb more?
I think it's a combination of both, man. Some people just have glass jaws, man. Some people just have glass jaws. I sparred with professionals, man, back then. 98, 99, I was sparring with Monty Barrett. I was sparring with Dimitri Salita. These guys are all pro boxers right now. But it's definitely a combination of both. It's mental and physical. Some people just have a good jaw. They could take a punch. Some people are scared to get hit, so it's mental. You know, it's a little bit of both, though.
What's your pick for the Anderson Weidman?
I'm gonna go.
Anderson Silva. I'm tired. Anderson Silva, Chris Weidman rematch.
I'm gonna go Weidman again because I think that. Well, I actually was maybe one of the fucking 2% who picked Weidman to win the other fight. Chris Weidman is a whole different animal than what Anderson Silva's been facing, man. And if you want to be, you know, listen, Anderson Silva, I'm not taking none away from the guy. The guy's a legend. But the guy's also really fought a lot of one-dimensional guys, a lot of James Irvin, fucking Damian Mines is a jiu-jitsu guy, Talis Latis, Forrest Griffin's a walking punching bag. You know, this kid Weidman is a whole different fucking animal. This kid could box, he could wrestle, he's young, he's a young bull. This is like something Anderson's never faced. So I knew his time was coming when he was about to face this kid. No disrespect to Anderson Silva, like I said, the guy's a legend. But in my opinion, his only real, like, you know, legitimate, legendary win was against Dan Henderson. A lot of the guys he beat, Vitor Belfort's a fucking juice head, you know. So it's like, you know, at the end of the day, man, like I said, I think Anderson Silva's record is a little overinflated, in my opinion. Still a great fighter, still a legend of the sport, might be the greatest of all time, but he's facing a completely different animal with Chris Weidman. That's pretty much it. Bloodstain Lane, 187 on you 666s. Respect the fucking shooter, and I'm out of here.
Cut.